his cardiac. Catch me in the Muni where the party at. Dog pound, turn up with the elf up on my starter cap. Brought him back, boy, we from the land and we proud of that. Louder man, front to the back, here we go, I got him shouting that. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go. Game on the line, Joe Thomas, I promise. Jim Brown running through opponents, how I got this. I return like Josh Cripps. Paying for the mini, got the dog pound jumping. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Ellery, coming at you live from Pensacola, Florida. Joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, how's it going?
It's hot. Not really hot, but it's been really hot here the last 3 days. A little muggy. I'm like, oh, there it is. There is that mugginess that it went from like 65 to 90, like that. So, but that's Ohio weather, right? Changes in a heartbeat. But you've been all over the place. You've been out west. You've been in Ohio. You've been in Florida. You'll be in New York next week. Just kidding. But yeah, Allie, it's been crazy. I know with work, I know you travel a lot, or you have the potential that can happen just because of the conferences and stuff that you go to. But yeah, we had a great week out at Najoku softball tournament. That was great to see the players out there kind of let their guard down. And I can report that Team Najoku redeemed himself this year and won the softball game. Really cool, though, this year that I thought was interesting about the softball game in particular. It helps youth in Northeast Ohio, like baseball and kids and teams. So there's all these kids there with their coaches. No joke, the coach from one of the baseball teams, he won the home run derby for the whole thing, and then he had the walk-off home run to win the game for Team Najoku. So I thought that was pretty cool that the coach that got to be a part of that was that, but it was interesting to see Shedeur Sanders. The kids love him, by the way. They adore him. Jerry Jeudy was obviously there, Cedric Tillman, Denzel Ward. A lot of the guys were there. And, of course, Team, Najoku being who he is, larger than life, having fun out there. But I tell you what, poured rain, by the way, several hours, which is typical, of Ohio. But I guess this year it's crazy. Fun fact for you, Allie. Cleveland has more rain year-to-date than Seattle, Washington. That is wild to even think about because Seattle is known for rain all the time. But it rained all up till about an hour before the game, and then it was dry. So it was like it worked out perfectly. But it rained like an inch and a half, 2 inches of rain. I know. You were here last week with those tornado warnings, so you know the crazy weather that Ohio has. It's crazy, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun, and then I went down to Tuscarawas County, down in your neck of the woods for that alumni event. That was really cool to see Felix, Greg Pruitt, Mike Pruitt were down there. Anthony Griggs and our good friend of the program, Robert Holly, was down there. So that was a lot of fun to see all those guys. And they got to go bowling and got to keep their bowling balls after they left. So I thought that was really cool, really well attended. So a shout out to those guys. First big event they did, by the way, Al, and you know how that is very nervous. I know how we were that first time we did an event, like, okay, is anybody going to show up? Is this going to be a flop? What are we doing? But they did a really good job. They had over 100 people show up, so it was really well attended.
Our first event, I do remember that. It was kind of a flop. It was not a flop.
No, that was not a flop.
No, hang on. It wasn't necessarily a flop. We had a good turnout, but I remember we had several people on, former players on. And back in the day, that's when we were using Zoom. So they were just logging in with their emails. We couldn't see who any of them were. And we were sitting on the couch at the apparel store in Cleveland, and we didn't know who we were talking to. There were just guys popping up, alumni, and Dustin and I were like, we don't know who this person is.
You mean physically? You mean physically up to us right there while we were sitting there?
No, virtually.
Oh yeah, virtually.
A couple of former players, and it didn't show their name. And this was really before we got into podcasting and developed relationships with these guys. But early on, it was like, So what do you think of the Browns? It's kind of a disaster.
And they were like, well, I think a lot of them. I actually played for 10 plus years.
Yeah, that was a very humbling experience, but we've come a long way since then. Dustin, before we get into it, I want to talk real quick about our friends over at Mr. Hero. Here's a quick word from them.
SOS, I could use a hero right about now. My faith love is upside down. H-E-R-O, where do we all go? SOS, I could use a hero right about now. My faith love is upside down. H-E-R-O, I crave a hero.
I'm telling you, that's my favorite song, like, of all time. It's so catchy. I love it. Guys, over at Mr. Hero, they are celebrating their 60th year of being in business. They have 104 Mr. Hero locations in Northeast Ohio. You need to get the app. They will give you some perks just for signing up, a buy one, get one offer, monthly coupons. You can order food within the app. So please be sure to check them out over at Mr. Hero because, I mean, my God, that song is it's so catchy. I love it. All right,
Well,
yeah, go
I have to
ahead.
say,
Sorry.
Ali, a lot of people have said it's great hangover food too. Mr. Hero solves a good hangover when you need to have things.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. I'll keep that in my back pocket. All right, guys, we've got a pretty jam-packed show for you tonight. It's kind of the dead period. Not a lot to talk about. This pertains to your Cleveland Browns, but we've got a special guest coming on, Camryn Justice. This interview is brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards.
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Woof, woof.
Hello, welcome to Lorello Vineyards, Larry and Kim Lorello. We have a beautiful Here We Go Brownies wine that we would like to offer to you this season as we did last season. We have several other award-winning wines, lovely entertainment and events coming this summer. So come and see us, wine a bit, you'll feel better.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you at the Muni lot this fall. Go Browns.
All right, let's bring her on. Emmy award-winning Camryn Justice. How are you?
Well, I'm good. You said Emmy award winning. It finally happened. I'm super excited, like super honored to for that to come to fruition.
It's so cool.
I've been nominated a couple times, but to actually win, and then to win 3 times in one night, that was really cool.
Can you walk us through that? Paint the picture. What was the experience like? I mean, what a humbling honor that is. That's so exciting. Congratulations, by the way. But paint the picture. How was it?
Well, so it was interesting because I have decided that I am bad luck going to award ceremonies. When I go to award ceremonies, I lose. So I opted not to go to the actual ceremony. We had a little watch party in Cleveland because the award ceremony was in Indianapolis, right outside of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay here. We had like a couple people, other people who were up for awards at the station who didn't go, kind of got together for a watch party. We were at Southern Tier Brewing Company, and it was like, we were downtown, just watching it on a TV. And I was fully convinced that I was like, okay, I was nominated. That's great. But I don't know. I don't win. So it's okay. So the first one I was up for, I was a tie. They announced the first winner. And I was like, well, lost. What are you going to do? And they're like, we have a second winner. And I was like, okay, this is really awesome. I won my first Emmy. This is great. And then the second one was for a specific story I did, which I love. It's 10,000 Miles on This Side of Heaven is what it's called. And it's just about this great man who he had a really great journey in life, sad, but also inspiring at the end. And then the Sports Reporter Award was my second one. And that was the one I really was hoping to win, just because it was a collection of some of the work that I've done over the past year. And I was up against some stiff competition, including one of my colleagues here at News 5. So to win that one was really cool. And then we won for sports excellence as a team award at WOOS over here. So my name on that one, and it was awesome. I expected to lose all 3, so to win all 3, it was a good night. We had some champagne. We celebrated, but it just feels like almost like validation to get it from your peers. And I always appreciate feedback from people watching and the viewers, and that's always awesome. So this was just like a little different kind of validation to get it from people in this industry. So super honored and super excited that experience happened.
It's so cool. Before you joined, actually, Dustin and I were talking before we even went on, and Dustin was talking about how he got to meet with you at the David and Njoku softball event, and he said, and Dustin, I'll let you tell your story, but just about how when you talk to players, it's almost like they just let their guard down around you, and you're able to just get a new, fresh perspective. So, really big fan of your work, and we're happy to have you on.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think it's cool to to provide a different kind of maybe coverage. I try to do stories that are a little out of the box. Like I love my X's and O's stories and what the team's doing at that level. But I think like the off the field stuff, community stuff, the fun pieces are really cool to do too. So also like super thankful to a lot of the players who have just like been open about it and have been down to do it and have been down to have some fun, because I've had some really cool stuff, and one of the big things that helped me win that Emmy for sports reporter on that reel was Mo Eats with Maurice Hurst. He's not with the Browns right now as a free agent, but last year was awesome with him, and I mean it really came down to his excitement about it too, and I couldn't do that without like them being down for it. So I'm super privileged and honored to have their trust in kind of bringing that stuff to life too, because it's not every day that you get to tour Northeast Ohio restaurants with a player and have them sit down and review the food. So that was really cool to be able to like bring that to our viewers. So not Mo Hurst, because without him, I mean, that was a big part of it too.
Awesome.
Camryn, is the one thing I've noticed, like when you do interviews, like you say, you get more, I don't want to say, personal with them, but you take a different angle to who they are, like the actual human being they are, and kind of take the lens off of the sports person that they are. And I feel that almost lets their guard down and just lets you into their lives a little more, like, what makes you tick, who you are. And I think you take that angle with these players. And I'm like, man, she's just getting some great nuggets out of these guys, because they just kind of feel like, okay, she's not here just asking the same old, what were you doing on that play or this play? But you actually get into just who they are as a person. You did that with the kicker last year. And you got really behind Dustin and kind of who he was as the person and what made him tick. And I could see his guard just completely came down, because like, oh, Camryn's, she actually cares about, me, the person. And I think a lot of times us that report on the Browns and do sports, we just, we're just thinking X's and O's, right? Like, hey, why'd you miss that tackle? Or, why'd you have this great game or bad game? And they're like, we're all human at the end of the day. And I think I just think that's a cool angle that like yourself takes. And I just think the fans enjoy it too, because a lot of these guys, all they see is, 3 hours on Sunday, and then, they scream about him or mad at him, after the game. But like, no, this is who the person really is. This is what he cares about. Here's what his philanthropic, things that he likes to give back to the community. So I just think it's really cool that you do that.
Yeah, I think that's like the foundation. That's what I aim to do, is like, that's the foundation. Let's get to know these people as people, because at the end of the day, we are human, right? And if I can show that, and I can show you that like I care about that, right? I think that there's maybe a level of trust or respect that like when you do have to do a story that's maybe not the greatest, when you're
Sure.
losing or when something bad like comes up, it is about the work. Like at the end of the day, I'm a journalist. I like to have fun. There are tough stories to be told, and I'll do that. And I think though, establishing that foundation of trust and understanding about, and like introducing them to like, hey, this is the job. It can be good too. Like it's good, and like there's good and bad that comes with it. Same as their job, right? Like sometimes they're going to have good games, and sometimes they're going to have bad games, and that's just like that's the nature of it. So sometimes I'm going to have to report good things, and sometimes I'm going to have to report bad things. But if we can keep that baseline mostly positive and mostly fun, that's what it's all about. And I think there's like that understanding. So I hope that comes through, and people who are watching see that too. But that's kind of how I try to approach everything, with like how whether it's Browns, Cavs, Guardians, local, the high school stuff, the college stuff that I do. I kind of just try to be myself, and that's who I am at the end of the day. Is like I care about all of the things. I care about the on the field stuff and the off the field stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
your
I just-
authenticity just comes through too. You can just read it, you can hear it, you can see it, and that just it's so refreshing, truly.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that too, Camryn, being a local person, right? Growing up in Northeast Ohio, it's a little more personal to you, right? I mean, because, the one thing I've learned about your colleagues and stuff, you bounce around. You may be in Chicago for a few years, and you may be in Atlanta or whatever, but you've been able to grow up here and cry and cheer all in maybe one day, right? When it comes to these to these sports teams. So you're invested from the heart and from a journalistic standpoint.
Oh, 100%. I think it's like the biggest challenge is people like, I mean, there's like, I think some people are afraid, right, to admit that, as you know, if you're a sports journalist, no matter where you're from, if you're a sports journalist, there's a reason you got into this. And 9 times out of 10, I would say that it's because you love sports, right? You're a fan. You were a fan. You were an avid fan growing up. You loved the game, whatever that your favorite game may be, or all of the game, right? And so for me, I grew up going to then Cleveland Indians games. That was like my birthday. Every year was a game at the Jake then the field. And so like that was like my introduction. And then it was watching the Browns every Sunday and watching the Cavs, and then finally like going to Cavs games. That was like more in my teenage years of like every time I could like get to a game, I would go. And so I had this established, you know, connection of these teams. And it just so happens that I work here. And so that's, I think maybe there's some fear of, you know, being able to admit that you like what you do.
100%. Yeah.
And I approach this to be as unbiased as I possibly can. I mean, at the end of the day, like anyone, even if they're not from here, anyone covering these teams want the team to do well, because it's easier to do the job when the team does well. It's easier to talk about the teams when they do well. So that's not a secret. Everybody at the end of the day should want this, like their teams in their markets that they're covering to do well. We all want that. For me, it's different because it's like, I want them to do well because like these are the teams that I grew up on too. But I have strived to create that level of balance of bias. Like I don't go into this as a fan. Now at the end, am I pulling for them? Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah. Who among us is not? But you know, balancing that level of like, okay, I used to be a fan. Now I still care about these teams, but going from fan to journalist has been like the transition. But at the end of the day, everybody doing this job, they're lying to you if they try to pretend that they don't care about it, because there's a reason that they got into this, and it's because they've been a fan of something. And if they're from here or nearby, it's a team that is around. And so I think that's like my biggest thing too, is like, let's like change like maybe the stigma around like talking about journalism in sports, because we all love it. We wouldn't be doing it if we hated sports, right? Like we like what we're watching. We like what we're doing. We grew up probably as fans, and like at some point there's been that fandom. So I like to channel that as maybe a way to navigate through it while still trying to, you know, keep I'm going to report on everything. I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to give you the information as it is, as I see fit. I'm not going to put anything into it. Like that's not my job. My job is to report. And I hope that that comes through. That's
yeah. Have you found yourself, you know, maybe early on in your career, the separation between being a fan and doing your job, kind of being a professional fan, if you will, you know, have you found that now, like when you're not reporting on them, if you just kind of step back, did it impact your fandom at all? Do you kind of view just casual sports, maybe not even Cleveland sports, but just sports now through a different lens than you did before?
Yeah, I think that when I'm not working, I maybe watch a little less than I used to. Yeah. Like that was like all that was on ever, like all the time. And now because it's so much, it's the day to day and it's everything. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm not going to watch this random NBA playoff game that the Cavs are not in. Instead, I'm going to watch Love Island. Like let's take my brain away from sports. I'm going to watch another episode of Friends or like anything on Netflix that like just binge, watch a movie, just read a book, like try to take myself out of it a little bit. In years past, I probably would, I'd be watching everything. I remember in the pandemic, right? I'm like, there was no sports. And then there was like Korean baseball. And I'm like, 3 a.m., like sports, let's go. So now it's like, maybe I balance it out with a little like extracurricular, non-sports hobbies, activities, viewing, things like that. But other than that, no, I mean, I love what I do, and I love being able to like be at the games and cover them just as much as I love when I am not at the games. Like Guardians are on the road, right? I'm TV on. Let's see what we got. Let's watch this. I'll stay up until 1 a.m. for a West Coast game to watch it. That's fine. And it helps because it's my job now too. So like, got to stay up to it, but I enjoy it. So that really hasn't changed. I just try to, I maybe watch a little bit less when I have the opportunity to watch a little bit less, just to create some balance with the mentals. Otherwise, it's a
fine line. Yeah, it's a fine line. Let's kind of just get into it. I want to talk about the Browns. I want to talk about the Cavs a little bit too, because we got the draft going on tonight. However, with the Cleveland Browns, we're not there. We're not seeing what's happening with OTAs, kind of the boots on the ground. You know, I'm in Florida, so I'm very, very removed. But just based off of what we're seeing on Twitter, on just socials, a lot of people have a lot of different takes on the quarterback situation. Can you kind of just paint the picture of what's actually happening? You know, are the reps equal? And if not, maybe how are they doing this? That's one of my biggest questions, is how is Kevin shaping these practices when you have 4 quarterbacks on the roster?
First, it's a little chaotic in a very organized way. I'm trying to shoot across 2 fields. So they often split the fields, and they have like Joe and Kenny over here, and then Shador and Dylan over here. And so they'll run the same things on different fields with obviously like different sets of players, where the rookies are most likely getting second stringers, practice squad guys looking to make the roster, and the starters are over here with the veterans. And that has shifted several times. They've done some modified 7-on-7s where it's not like, or 11-on-11s where it's maybe 8 or 9 guys on one side, just to give different looks, to feel different pressure. Because I mean, they're doing all this in shorts and no pads, right? So pass rush, we'll call it, but just some pressure in those team drills. They've been kind of shaking that up a little bit to create some variety and simulate different looks they're trying to give in terms of like looking at their footwork, looking at how they roll out, things like that. But I think like for reps wise, no, it has not been equal. It started heavy reps for Joe Flacco, and he's obviously taking the majority of the first team reps. And then it got a little bit heavy, and then he kind of got some rest. Those reps got shifted over, and Kenny Pickett is getting the majority of those first team reps, and getting a lot of that work there, and which makes sense. He's a veteran, and he has the least experience with this offense. Joe Flacco knows this offense a little bit more. You can maybe take those reps away, and you need to see what you've got in Kenny Pickett and get him up to speed, so it's truly an even evaluation in your veterans. Then when we get down to the rookies, Dylan Gabriel taking less reps than the 2 veterans, but still then more reps than Shador Sanders. He's gotten those first team reps a couple times. He went against Myles Garrett in mini camp. Myles Garrett was in his face, and it's like, welcome to the league. Dylan Gabriel, like, here you are. And he joked about it. He was like, you saw it. There was that time. He was right here. I was like, yes, he was. So he's gotten a little bit more of those first team reps in terms of the rookies. And Shador Sanders he's gotten team reps. He's gotten 7-on-7. He's gotten 11-on-11s. He's gotten red zone work, things like that, but he hasn't gone against the first team. So that's what's left for Shador Sanders, is like, we'll probably see that when come training camp, is maybe that ramps up, but the shifting and maneuvering has kind of been more throughout, like taking some from Joe Flacco, moving into Kenny Pickett, getting Dylan Gabriel in the mix, and then making sure Shador Sanders is getting some teamwork too. Those first team reps against the starting defense, that's what remains to be completely evened out and across the board. So I'm waiting for training camp to see how they continue to navigate that. But right now it looks like it's super heavy on the veterans, working the rookies in there a little bit more the further in they go, which makes sense because they've got the biggest hill to climb. This is like, they have to learn an NFL playbook for the first time, and they have to learn this particular offense and going against guys that have been in this league for some time. While these veterans, they've done it before. So different challenges. Each guy kind of has different things that they need to achieve through this offseason and then into training camp. Joe Flacco being the most seasoned, needing the least amount. So it doesn't surprise me that Kenny Pickett's taking a lot of that, because you just need to see him. You haven't seen him. So it's not surprising, but that's how it's shaken out.
Yeah.
Quick question for you, Camryn. It's a 2-part question. First and foremost, I always call it the eyeball test. When you're on the ground looking at these players, you can just see things, right? You just see things at that speed of the game. I guess what player has stood out to you at camp so far that surprised you, that kind of, you're like, that guy's going to have, he's looking like something's different with that guy. And then second, do you think in your mind, do you think the Browns keep 4 guys going into week 1? Do you think what we see now, will we have all 4 quarterbacks on the roster, in your opinion?
I don't think so. I think that in an ideal world, you can get some value from one of the guys. That's kind of how they've navigated the past couple of years. 4 camp arms by the time the season starts, whether that's in the preseason or in that gap in between the preseason and the regular season, trading a guy for some draft capital. I think that's the ultimate goal, because you want value for your guys. Keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, whether that's on the active or one on the practice squad. I think that's kind of how they navigate it. I don't anticipate them moving away from that unless they see something that really makes them feel like, okay, we got to have all 4 of these guys. I don't see 4. I see 3. Standout wise, I was thinking of it. I was trying to figure this out. I'm like, okay, like who's really stood out? And it's so hard right now. Like, I don't think it's a fair evaluation. The question is always like, who's winning the quarterback battle? And I don't think there's a winner yet. I think there's like,
and mine's for like any player. Like, it doesn't have to be quarterback.
Well, in terms of quarterback, I'll say like each of them I've seen what makes them stand out, right? Like what we've seen so far through minicamp, through OTAs, is the abilities that have gotten them to this point. Like Joe Flacco, obviously, he looks sure. Like, you know what you're getting out of Joe. Joe just looks like he's that guy. Like, he's been doing this forever. He knows what he's doing. You don't got to worry about him. Kenny Pickett has had some really, really good connections with David Njoku, with Jerry Jeudy. Like, he's put some like really good balls out there. And those plays, I mean, again, it's all in shorts, but like, relatively speaking, he looks like he's like figuring it out, and he's connecting with some of these guys, which is what you want to see. Dylan Gabriel, he's confident, and you can see that confidence when he's in that pocket. He's obviously had some early struggles of just like figuring out how that pass rush is coming against him, like, and that's to be expected. He's learning this playbook, and this is his introduction to the NFL. But he's also made some really good passes, and when that ball comes out of his hand, it's sure. He's throwing it with confidence. Like, you can tell that he played 6 years in college. Like, this isn't new to him. The NFL is new to him. Being a quarterback is not new to him. Right. And so that you can see, like, okay, he's a confident guy. He's got that assured nature about him, which you want from a quarterback. And he's very mature in the sense of how he carries himself, how he talks. He's like that prototypical, like, stereotypical quarterback that's no frills. He's just like, here's your answer. Kind of coach talk, kind of coach speak. His answers are very coach speak. I'm like, oh, did you go to the school of Kevin Stefanski? Like, you guys are, I see why this is a match made in heaven. I like it. So then obviously, and then Shedeur Sanders, like, there is no question Shedeur Sanders' accuracy, like, that has stood out. Some of the places he puts the ball, you look at it and you're like, well, that was pretty. Like, that is what he went into this draft. Like, that's the accuracy, the completion percentage. Like, you can see how it got there. And so sometimes when he throws that ball, you're like, you keep that up. And this looks good against first team. There it is. Like, good luck, Browns, figuring out who you're gonna start. Because I think it's a competitive battle. And I like what all 4 have shown me so far in terms of like why they are in this competition. And training camp is the real test, though. I like when all 4 have first team reps and all 4 have reps in pads with contact possible with all these guys. Like, that's when we're talking like getting a real feel for it. But outside of the quarterbacks, I think there's 2 guys. I think Jerry Jeudy is just like, he's just there. He's been, the connections he's making with Kenny Pickett is huge. He's making some good plays with all of the quarterbacks that he's worked with so far. Like, he's there. And I think that that's like indicative of this being a big season for him. I think that he's like really come into his own on the Browns. And I think he's kind of shown what he could do. And that's super promising for his career, because it wasn't working in Denver, and for him to have this second chance, I think he's taking full advantage. I think we're going to see that as long as he can get that connection. The quarterback situation has to be figured out before we talk about offensive weapons succeeding, But I think Jerry Jeudy might have a really big year. I think that he's already showing up and he's ready to be a leader. He's ready to be that wide receiver one that the Browns have been looking for. On the other side of the ball, who's impressed me, Mamu Diabate. I think that this could be a big year for him. He is all over the place. And it's just like, and every time there's a play, oh, it's Mahmoud. There he is again. He's all over the field. And like, I was talking to Jason Tarver, their coach, and he said, yeah, this could be a big year for him. Like he's worked hard. They liked what he's been able to do in his development. Like this year 3 lead is poised to be really big for him. And he's taken it seriously so far. He's fired up out there. He wants to be where the ball's at. And to be honest, they need a guy like that. You lose Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You got a rookie Carson Schlesinger coming in who has the potential, like Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush, they could wear the green dot, but like Carson's in that position too. Mamu Diabate gives you that ability of a guy that's young, but still has some seasoned experience in having to step up and fill that role and the hunger to earn that spot. Cause there's a lot of linebackers on a team that where there were question marks. They filled those gaps. And now you got to figure out kind of who's going to be the main guys, who's going to be part of a rotation. And I think Mamu Diabate has a potential to have a big season if he continues what he's looking like in camp. I mean, he's everywhere. So those are the 2 guys I think that have impressed me so far. Really excited once the pad comes on, though, right, to see what they're going to do. Who's going to stand out then?
I love that, because my next question to you was, I was going to list a couple of areas or position groups that I think maybe do have some question marks. One of them was going to be the receivers. And my question was going to be, who in that room is stepping up? Jerry Jeudy. Okay. The linebackers. Diabate. That's what I had written down. So the next area yes, really. The next area it's not really a huge concern, because I just think that they went through a lot last year, is the offensive line. Now, within that group, and now I know it's OTAs, really hard to tell. Training camp's going to be where we get some of these answers. But, just seeing DeJuan Jones back out there and healthy, is there anybody standing out on the offensive line, or that maybe you feel confident is going to step up in a big way for this offense this season?
I think what's going to happen is Wyatt Teller is going to be a big key to this. Wyatt being that leader, that voice. Getting Joel Bitonio back was huge. Yeah. Having Wyatt having a good season and feeling like a leader is going to be really big as well. But I think that the offensive line, it is hard to tell because they really haven't been a part of it. DeJuan Jones is looking healthy, which is nice. We're going to see what happens with that when that rush really comes to fruition in training camp, and how he fares at left tackle. Because I think there's some growing pains still to be had there. Because it is relatively new. He played well when he was plugged in there, but for it to be a full-time position and the starting position, there's going to be some growing pains. It's natural, but I do think that the change in Tommy Rees being the offensive coordinator and Mike Bloomgren coming in and taking over that offensive line, they like his energy. They like his approach. That's going to be huge. They're saying he's tough, and not a knock on last year, but there was a shift in the approach. And I think that this is going to be appreciated. A tough coach that is going to hold everybody accountable. He's going to talk to you like they need to be talked to, like how they like to be talked to, which is tough. What they called him, not an expletive, but it was a choice word to describe his style of leadership. And he was like, you know what, if it's a compliment, I'll take it. But they know that he's got that fiery nature to him. And I think the philosophy for the offensive line this year is kind of going back to the schemes, the way that they operated when they were successful 2020, 2021. Like that's the kind of offensive mindset that they're going for as the offensive line. And I think that's going to bode well for them. I think getting back to what worked for them in terms of the blocking schemes, that's going to be huge. And the veterans that are there, Joel, Wyatt, they know, Jack, they know what worked, and they wanted, they said that at the end of the year, we got to get back to what was working. All the changes we made this year did not work. We felt them not working. They pushed for it to kind of go back, but you were too far deep. It is what it is. So you get back to what was working. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Kind of, lesson learned there. Let's get back to where it was. And I think that's kind of the approach. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. That's what I'm going for. Cautiously optimistic that this offensive line is going to get back to that strength that it was. It was a strength of the team for years.
Yeah.
That was the reason offense works, because the coverage on that line and the way that they were able to protect was huge.
Mhm.
Their scheme was great. It worked so well. And so I think you get back to that changes the tone for the offense. No matter who's at quarterback, if you have a strong offensive line, you at least give them the ability to have composure in the pocket, to find those open guys. You have more of a shot at success offensively, whether you have an elite quarterback or just a playable quarterback. No matter who's under center, no matter who's back there, if you have that offensive line working for you, it provides more opportunities. And to me, it feels like maybe then it gives that offense a better shot. So that, I think, is like they call the defensive line the engine of the defense. And that's how Jim Schwartz operates on that side of the ball. I think the philosophy's got to be the same for the offensive line. They're not driving it because that's the quarterback, but they are the key to success, in my opinion. That's going to help the run game. That's going to help keep that quarterback protected so guys can get open. Tight ends can block. Tight ends can get open too. The receivers can thrive. You can get downfield and those deep threats, because that's what Jerry Jeudy is. That's what Cedric Tillman can be. That's what Jamari Thrash. He's out there. He's got that speed. They have the ability to spread the field out and to really make explosives if the quarterback's operating well. And that comes down at first to the offensive line holding fort. Then it comes down to the quarterback getting that ball to the receiver.
In the trenches.
Yep.
In the trenches.
Is what matters.
It
Camryn,
really is.
Camryn, real quick question. One of our listeners asked, Jason asked, how is Mason Graham looking?
So Mason, it's funny because the first time I saw Mason Graham close up on his side of the field, it was bad timing. I went over to shoot some video and he was under the weather. got a little sick, so it wasn't looking great because he just got a little sick on the field. What can you do?
I've been there.
After that, he's looked fast, springy. You can see kind of that when he's at the bags, right? The way that he approaches and goes in for the tackle, you see his hand placement, and it's that technique that they loved, right? He was a wrestler too. He's a football player and a wrestler. And that's one of the big things that they liked about him was the way that he's able to use his hands to navigate that offensive line, to break through, to get around. It's his strength and his speed. That's important, obviously, as the interior, but it's the small technique that he brings and the unique ability that he has from the grappling techniques in wrestling. You don't want to hold, but you can get around it and you can use that. You see that on the bags a little bit. And I'm really looking forward to when they can make contact and they can kind of start hitting, because I think you'll start to see that a little bit more. So a rough, maybe first appearance, but took it with a grain of salt. And he's been, I think, impressive. You can see again, some of those unique attributes that he has provided that made him such a target for the Browns and a reason that they traded back. They felt like they could get the assets, still get this guy that they really, really liked, and then that could provide an immediate impact. And I think that if he is able to use those and turn those and get NFL ready, which he's working really hard, and I appreciate that about him, and he's looked better every single day. I think that provides a really big explosion for the defense, because that's what they've been missing. They've had really solid defensive tackles who can kind of do the job, but injuries have plagued them there. Yeah. The rotation has it's been so inconsistent. So to have somebody of that caliber that the Browns think they have in him paired with a strong edge, I mean, that's what Jim Schwartz is all about. I think they've got to be really excited about how he continues to grow. But I think that it's so far so good. So far so good for Mason.
Oh, beautiful. Things you love to hear. Camryn, I'll get you out of here on this one. Just real quick, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the NBA draft is tonight. And as we know, there have been some trades already, some crazy stuff happening. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that the Cavs could be in the mix for some of these guys? Or do you think that they're kind of just going to ride it out, go back into basically what they have into next year? Because we know, unfortunately, with Halliburton's injury, Jason Tatum's injury, East is, I mean, they got an opportunity. They've got an opportunity.
kind of
Are we
wide
gonna-
open.
Yeah, are we gonna ride into it as we are? Or do you think they're gonna make a move here and there?
Here's the thing. When you continue to not get the results you're looking for, change sometimes becomes inevitable. So it
Sure.
wouldn't surprise me if they do feel like a move or two is important. But that said, I think that there is a lot of confidence that this team has it. They just need to get to that next step. They just need they needed this experience of being the favorites, being there, having it right in front of them. And it wasn't an underdog battle. It wasn't, okay, they don't belong here. It was like they belong here, and then they got out gritted.
Yeah.
They said it, the Pacers were hungrier. And to have that experience, I think that a lot of those players feel very strongly that this is what instills the hunger in them. Like this was almost promised to them. Like nothing is promised. Like, this was theirs for the taking though. And to miss out on it in that capacity is tough and it stings. And Donovan Mitchell said it best. It's embarrassing. And they want everybody to feel embarrassed because there's no reason in their minds that they should have not made it to where they thought they were supposed to be because of who they've got and how they were playing. I think that there's belief in the core four. There's belief in keeping things the same. Kobe Altman did it already, and it culminated in an incredible regular season and a strong opening round. And it just, when it came down to the Pacers, they wanted it more. And you cannot deny what the Pacers have done. Like, it's absurd at times. You're like, okay, this game's over. Wait, no, it's not. They have been on a remarkable run, and, credit to them, like huge credit to them. And so you have to kind of weigh that out. Do you think that what you're doing can get past that point? Do you think that there's going to be another team that does that, has this miraculous run that gets that hungry? The only team that I really see like being super, super hungry for it is maybe Detroit. And I don't know that still that's not a matchup that worries me as much as that Cavs Pacers matchup ended up worrying me.
Orlando, maybe like a little bit.
Just
yeah.
But and once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. So that said, I don't count anybody out ever. There's never a matchup where I'm like 100%. That's it. Call it. Like anybody can be competitive once you get to the playoffs. But I think that they're in a position where either way, right? I don't think there needs to be there's not going to be giant movement. There's not going to be the core four disbanding and it's just one guy and everyone else is going to be different. Maybe a piece, maybe two pieces, maybe a
3-and-D,
a guy off the bench, some new bench players coming in, maybe one of the starting five. I think there's some value there. You have you consider your bigs, maybe like a Jarrett Allen, obviously in consideration. Like, do you find somebody else that maybe works a little bit better? They love Jarrett Allen for good reason. He played all 82 games. Playoff against the Pacers, it was tough. It was tough for him. He knows it. Like, I think he'll be the first to admit that was not his best, and he knows that he could do better. So yeah, I think you look at things like that. Like, can you improve there? What's the market look like? What can you get? How do you, and you also now have to factor in that second apron and money. And so it's a weird game. And you see all the movement around the NBA, right? Like Porzingis being traded and you're like, whoa, what is Boston doing? Well, you got to get under that second apron. So I think the Cavs are a little restricted on what they do. But it could also make the moves a little bit interesting. It might be something that you didn't expect, some movement that you didn't expect, but I would not be shocked if nothing major happens because we saw it last year and there was success. They think that the experience can take them to the next level. But if the more they evaluate it, the more they think maybe somebody is available. That's the only way that I see some movement happening, is if in deeper evaluation, they indicate one area as, okay, this guy can plug in this, and this is what we were missing, but they feel good about it. So
we'll see.
Run it back. It might be a run it back thing, and people will be mad about that, I'm sure, but people will be mad if they trade somebody they like. So it's kind of a lose-lose. You just kind of get through it, get back on the court this fall, and
just ride the wave. Just ride the wave.
And then playoffs come, you gotta be ready for them.
That's it. Hey, Camryn, this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time for us. We really appreciate it.
No, yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys. can't wait to talk to you again.
Yeah, look
of course.
forward to
That is Emmy award-winning Camryn Justice.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks
Jamie.
so
Have a
much.
good night.
Take care.
Go
Thank you.
Browns.
All right. That interview was brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards. We're going to go through a couple of these ad reads just quickly before we bring David on. Dustin, I'm going to turn it over to you. We've got Greater Cleveland Aquarium. What's going on over there?
Well, David will love this. Dustin live in the Shark Tank next week. That's right. The show will be live in the Shark Tank, probably about where that stroller is where I'll be set up in that Shark Tank. But next week, guys, July 4th through the 7th is appreciation for military and first responders. So they get into the Greater Cleveland Aquarium July 4th through July 7th for free. That's right, free. If you're in Cleveland and you got family, if you have a firefighter, a police officer, someone in active duty, go down there and enjoy it. It's free to go down there and take in that. But I look forward to visiting down there, showing some folks some behind the scenes of what's all there next week from the Shark Tank and the stingrays and all the other wonderful exhibits they have down there at Greater Cleveland Aquarium.
But what about this guy or this lady? Lady Caroline.
Well, this lady, Lady Caroline, that's right. If you're looking for a lunch or dinner cruise, or you're in for a Browns game, or just wanting to get out there and take in 2 hours on Lake Erie, check out Lady Caroline. That's right. They also can do weddings. They can do banquets. They can do all kinds of great things. But check them out. They're right down there by the Greater Cleveland Aquarium, right down there by the dock on the Cuyahoga. But go down and check them out. We're going to be doing some cool stuff later this year from the Lady Caroline as well. So that'll be a lot of fun.
There you go. Also, real quick, Stadium Mustard, guys. If you don't have that in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard, rich in both taste and tradition. By the way, it's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. Let's bring him on, the husband of the program, Dr. David Ullery. Hi, David.
Hi, Allie. Hi, Dustin.
What's happening?
Nothing. Not a whole lot. Just enjoyed listening to that interview, and the sun has finally returned here.
Beautiful.
Okay, so
Beautiful.
do you get those thunderstorms that roll through, rain kind of, and then an hour later it's sunshine?
We get probably like 2 to 3 storms a day. It's just crazy. It's crazy. It's constant.
Wild.
And then it's beautiful, and then it rains. But it's just so humid here. I mean, like insanely humid, unlike anything I've ever experienced. And it just storms. It rains, and then
you don't have to worry about your curls, Allie. The hair will just naturally curl up because of the humidity.
It does, yeah. That's true. David, what do we got? What do we got to talk about?
Not a whole lot, as you alluded to. This is really the dead period, truthfully, in the off season. And Mr. Caroline, what's even tougher, I realized when I was going through this kind of series of injury predictions that we were looking at, they only do fantasy relevant players, including quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. That's about it. No offensive line, very minimal defensive players. And so we're going to have to limit it to just that for now, which we can still analyze and look at the end of the season for the offensive skill position players. But I wanted to do offensive linemen today, but it's not going to happen. That being said, there's still a lineman I'm going to talk about and just kind of do some relevant, I guess, injury and anatomy stuff for him. And that's Mike Hall Jr. He injured his knee in week 18 last year, ended up having an MCL tear, and he ended up having surgery to repair or reconstruct that MCL. As of now, he is on track to return for the start of the season, probably in a limited basis, though. Probably not going to be, full go, playing as many snaps as we expect to see him when he's fully healthy. But hopefully we see him make a good return here, just because he was really starting to come into his own towards the end of the season, getting more playing time, kind of becoming the player we think he could be. And as of now, I would expect to see him back suited up by the beginning of the year, but how much we'll see him in camp and all that remains to be seen. There's a couple different ways they can designate him through his recovery. Most likely he'll be on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list at some point. That's reserved for injuries sustained during the previous season or off-season training activities. And they can be activated during training camp, or if they're on that at the start of the season, after the first 4 games of the regular season. So I would say at most, unless there's a severe significant setback, that's where we'll see him designated at some point as we get into camp in July and into August as well. I wouldn't expect him on the NFI list or injured reserve list just because he'll be out much longer or the entire season with those. And I expect him to be back ready to go, like I said, by week 1, I would anticipate. So with MCL injuries and the NFL, there's one study in particular that I looked at just to kind of get a better feel for it. Now, this was looking at players at the combine prior to joining the NFL, but I still think it gives us a good idea of what recovery looks like and all of that. And so from 2009 to 2015 in the combine, they looked at this group looked at almost 2,300 players, and a total of 13% were identified as having MCL injuries. Of those players, about half of them also had additional other soft tissue injuries, meniscus, ACL, PCL, other things like that. But when you look at players who had isolated MCL injuries, whether it was repaired surgically or allowed to heal on its own without surgery, which is a player to think of in that situation would be David Montgomery. He had an MCL injury at the end of this last season as well, but he did not have surgery. Either way, whether they had surgery or not, a prior history of MCL tear had no negative impact on an athlete's NFL performance, according to this study. Players who had isolated MCL injury performed significantly better compared with athletes who had combined injuries with regard to draft position, proportion playing 2 seasons or more in the NFL, and games played and started in the first 2 years. So obviously this is a little different because, Mike suffered his injury after he already got drafted, but he's still early on in his career. And I think we can kind of extrapolate that data to kind of see what it's going to be for him. And as long as he fits into this kind of category, it seems like he really should not have much of a negative impact on his playing career. So that just goes to show that these are injuries that can be managed very well, whether it's conservatively or through surgery, and players can recover from them and have meaningful snaps and careers afterwards. So I wouldn't, be too down on his, ability or opportunity to recover and to, play for this team and play well, hopefully. So just a little bit of insight into his injury, his surgery, and kind of what his recovery looks like and when we can expect him to be back.
Yeah. And just in terms of getting him back, probably no reason to believe that he won't come back the player that we expect him to be, right, David? Like, really no setback in terms of how he'll be on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. He had surgery in January, so he's already 5 months into this recovery for an MCL repair or reconstruction with nothing else going on. Recovery is probably around 6 to 7 months. But like I said, they take it so carefully with NFL players to try and ramp things up slowly. And as we know, there's no substitute for game action. You just can't replicate it. And so rather than thrusting him into back, a full snap count for whatever that might look like for him game 1, they're going to ease him back into it. But to answer your question, Allie, I don't think we should expect it to be any long-term detriment to his ability to play and perform the way we all expect him to.
Okay. Real quick, just want to tell you about our friends over at True Fan Travel. They are your ultimate sports road trip buddy, all about bringing you closer to the heart-pounding action of your favorite away games, whether you're cheering from the stands or soaking in the local vibes, and make sure every trip is packed with those I was there moments. So please be sure to check them out over at True Fan Travel. I want to talk a little bit about, and I did not prep you for this at all, but I'm sure that you'll be able to go with this one. But we saw just the other day, Tyrese Halliburton went down with that Achilles, and we were just talking about this with Camryn Justice. We know that Jason Tatum went down with the same injury, but with Halliburton, he had the calf strain. And so many people were saying, on socials, athletes have been saying, if you have a calf strain, do not play on it because this is what can potentially happen. I just want to talk about that. Do you think that this could maybe lead to seeing players, football, basketball, what have you, with some soft tissue injuries or strains that are going to just maybe be more cautious and willingness to sit out just based on what we saw with Tyrese?
Yeah, I think, we might start to see a shift in that. And maybe I think it's probably going to come down to just awareness of how this impacts players and what it could potentially lead to. And so not only player decisions, but also just more informed decisions from trainers and team physicians kind of saying hey, listen, we have seen a growing trend in sports across all sports, really, NBA, football, those two for sure, just with the Achilles injuries we've seen across the board. And it may be more of a, hey, this is something that we know may predispose you to tearing your Achilles. And while it may not be a direct precursor, a calf strain, kind of looking at like the anatomy and the science behind it, it can weaken the Achilles tendon or even put more stress on it, just because you're going to be running differently, jumping differently, using that leg differently, and you're going to tend to play through pain a little bit more, especially in games. And so, again, it's hard to say that like having a calf strain directly leads to a player having an Achilles tear, but it's going to predispose them to play differently. It's going to alter their gait, alter their mechanics, and just increase their risk in general for injury. And it just so happens to be kind of in the same area. So I definitely think you could see there being a more, what I want to say, a lower threshold to hold players out longer for this type of injury specifically, especially with just the flurry of injuries we've seen. I mean, just to name notable Achilles tendon injuries in the NBA from this past season alone, the first two you mentioned already, Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum, but then Damian Lillard also suffered one this playoff season. But during the regular season, we saw DeJounte Murray, Isaiah Jackson, James Wiseman, and Drew Smith all have injuries as well. And so in terms of just the sheer volume of Achilles injuries, it seems so much higher than it did even a decade ago, but certainly 2 or 3 decades ago. And similarly in the NFL, we've had this string of Achilles injuries and quarterbacks in particular. So I definitely think there is going to be a much more acute and higher awareness of Achilles injuries, calf strains, and kind of the relationship between the two, and a much more cautious approach to managing these and making sure that if a player is going to return after having a calf strain, that they are going to be as close to 100% recovered as possible to avoid this from happening.
Yeah. I mean,
I was going to say, David, you bring up a good point, like quarterbacks, right? We see a lot more from the quarterbacks, but it's also the most important position on the football field, right? So to your point, rushing these quarterbacks back to possibly be game ready when they're not, and then they suffer a devastating injury, you're right, there probably needs to be something looked into that. But I'm assuming that correlates with like, well, I need to go play on the quarterback, right? Like he's also under pressure, like, yeah, it's hurting and maybe I have a strain, but I got to go out there. And then boom, he has a catastrophic injury that, sets him back. So it's interesting, but I think there's a lot of pressure on these quarterbacks to go out and play, right? So then you throw them out there and then they get hurt, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Real quick, David, before you jump in, just also want to tell you about our friends over at City Barbecue, guys. If you're looking to have maybe an event catered or just breakfast, lunch, dinner, what have you, head on over to City Barbecue. They've got award-winning meat, sauces, and sides. Be sure to check them out over at City Barbecue. Take it away, David.
No, I was going to agree. Like that's the tough thing with the quarterbacks in particular is there's this desire and drive to play because they're the leader of the offense, and like you got to be out there taking this team where they are. So I think the bigger emphasis probably will be in day-to-day, week-to-week recovery in between the games and preparation and prevention. So more calf strengthening, calf training, sort of soft tissue preparation to avoid these things from happening. And so that's going to be, I think, a big part of what we see moving forward in the NFL and NBA.
Yeah.
Does wearing high tops help prevent Achilles injuries? As far as I know, I won't even say that. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know if wearing a high top really prevents it. My gut is going to kind of say no. High tops they certainly do provide a little bit more stability or support to the ankle joint, but it's still just a soft canvas or a soft, shoe. It's not a rigid material. And so the ankle still bends, the Achilles still you still get strain and stretching on the Achilles. I'll try and look into that and see if I can come up with a better answer. But I don't know off the top of my head if there's any correlation between that, and truthfully just guessing, I would expect there not to be like a way for high tops to actually prevent or reduce the amount of that injury.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thought just because it seems, and I don't know if this is true. I don't have any statistics in front of me, but it seems like Achilles tears are just very common right now and happening more so than. What does that sound, David? Can you hear that too? Okay. Never mind. I saw you take your headphones out. I'm like, I'm hearing something also. But nonetheless, it just seems that Achilles injuries are happening more and more frequently. But maybe that's just because we're all aware of them. But, I saw something where, years ago, all of these basketball players and football players were wearing more high tops than low tops.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there is any correlation. It's something to look into, but I've seen that floating around on socials also.
Yeah. I don't have any good data to support it one way or the other, but it is an interesting thought, and I would be curious to know if there is anything that kind of shows at least a correlation, if nothing else.
Yeah. All right, David, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
David,
As always.
it's a pleasure.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.
All right, that is Dr. David Ullery, the husband of the program. That's the medical moment. Just a couple of other things to get to before we wrap up tonight. Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about Lake Erie Distillery?
Yeah, guys, if you haven't had Lake Erie Distillery, ask for it at your local watering hole or bar, restaurant, wherever you enjoy the great liquors. I've got some of this wonderful Burning River. That's the cinnamon whiskey. It is amazing. Great stuff. But also look for it in any of your Northeast Ohio liquor stores as well, and check them out. We got just a minute or two. We didn't get into the NFLPA. That kind of made a little bit of a dust this week in what happened and some of these collusion with the NFL and these guaranteed contracts. And I believe Wyatt Teller, former player, might have called Russell Wilson a wuss in a text message for not taking the guaranteed contract. So there's a lot of stuff that was put out there. So I'm just curious, like, what your thought is. It's interesting because it goes to arbitration now, right? It's in arbitration technically now, this whole thing with the NFLPA. But just wanted to get your 2 cents on it, Ellie.
Well, I'm just looking. Did Wyatt Teller say that?
Allegedly in a text.
He didn't retire, right? You said former player Wyatt Teller. I just want to make sure
No, not Wyatt Teller. J.C. Treader. Sorry.
J.C. Treader. Okay.
Yeah, J.C. Treader, who was the head of the NFLPA. Sorry.
He is the president.
Sorry. My apologies, Wyatt Teller.
I'm like, what did I miss? We didn't talk about this at all. My God.
No, J.C. Treader, former Cleveland Brown J.C. Treader. Let me speak that. Okay. Made the comment about yes. I do want to talk about this. I want to get more into this next week, if I'm being honest, just for time. We don't have a ton of time tonight. I think that there's some really interesting things that kind of come of this. I was listening to Jake Burns talk about this yesterday or today, talking about, maybe if you put more money into some of these things, such as having hospitality, so family before and after games, what that looks like, and just the overall environment, the stadium, the experience to be a player, for that organization. If you up that, more players will want to come play for you, and in turn, maybe that means more winning. So that's kind of just my baseline. Sorry? Wait, maybe like a beautiful dome and a plane off experience.
Just like that. So yes, I want to have this conversation, but I want to kind of kick this one to next week, just so we have more time to talk about it.
Dig into it, Dig into it.
So look forward to that next week. Before we wrap up, Dustin, I saw you had posted some really cool things from our friends over at Primetime Sports. Some awesome framed jerseys from basically every team that you could imagine.
As I say, I got the privilege to, and I got him to sign this, Al. You'll find this funny, but Kyle Manzardo is from Idaho. So I got him to sign a picture yesterday Monday that said Mr. Idaho, Kyle Manzardo. I had him sign it. And then David Fry was there as well. So they had a signing with 2 of the Guardians players. They had more players are coming. I can't tell you publicly who they have coming, but they have a very big signing coming because it's not official yet, but that's coming, which is going to be super cool, and Browns fans will be excited about it. We'll just put that out there. But yeah, very cool stuff. But if you get a chance, now they have their new store in Belden Village. Of course, they have the store at the Great Northern Mall. The frame shop is in Kent, so if you want your stuff framed, you can drop it off. And then, of course, they have their store in Hartville. So they're expanding and doing a lot of cool things. But I got to tell you, that store in the Belden Village is like 12,000 square feet. It is a very cool store. It's kind of their signature store now, and they'll use that with the Hall of Fame as well. So
Yeah, awesome. Be sure to check that out. And also, just right before we wrap up here, if you're looking to maybe get your official Here We Go Brownies podcast t-shirts, or if you're looking for maybe some Cleveland football apparel, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, or basketball or baseball, head on over to We Bleed Ohio Apparel. You can get that on their website. They've got great deals, some really cool designs. So check them out over at We Bleed Ohio.
And speaking of that, they are literally printing as we speak, and Hanford is very excited to go pick them up. But you can now pick up your Hanford Dixon show t-shirts there with him sitting in the chair with the dogs. Those are hot off the press as well, because Hanford's going to go take those to the golf tournament, and put those in people's hands so they can be wearing his Hanford Dixon show shirts.
Awesome. Beautiful. All right, Dustin, anything else before we wrap up on a beautiful
No,
Wednesday?
just a big shout out to Camryn again. Always insightful, always great stories to tell, and kind of coming through a different lens than what we see every day. So just a thanks to her being on the show, and look forward to having her on again.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.